How's it going? Dave from Comic Book Investments. So today is going to be another top 10 video. Last week, if you remember, I did a top 10 video on the top 10 Spider-Man comics that you should invest in. And a subscriber brought up a pretty good point. He was saying these books are amazing and all, but let's be honest, most people can't afford most of these books on the list. So Fantasy 15, most people can't afford that. Even this down the list, you had a bunch of other books that are just kind of out of the reach for people. So I decided to do a top 10 video on the top 10 Spider-Man comics under $1,000 that you should invest in. So this was a pretty tough list to do because there's so many Spider-Man keys and so many good books out there. But I feel like this is a pretty good list. And you might find that some of these, if you look at it, have jumped up in value more than others. And percentage-wise, it's not just solely based off percentage. It's also based off of, the floor and the ceiling and where I think this book is going to go in the future, and also the risk-reward factor in it. A Fantasy 15 might not go up the same percentage as another book that's only like $100 and then it jumps up to, $1,000 in 10 years. That's a 10x, gain. But the floor for a Fantasy 15 is a lot lower, and also the risk factor, Fantasy 15s are just going to go up, things like that. So you have to take all this into account when I did this list. So let's just jump into it. But before I do, if you haven't subscribed, please think about subscribing. It helps out this channel. All right, let's jump into it. Number 10, we got Spectacular Spider-Man 64, and you can pick up a 9.8 of this currently for $600. And 5 years ago, it was selling for $513, and 10 years ago, it was selling for $161. That is a 17% return in 5 years and a 273% return in 10 years. A record price was a 9.8, sold for $895, and that was this year. Now, if you look at the very bottom, you can see that I always compare it to stocks. 10-year return of Dow Jones is 163%, S&P 500 197%. I put in there Apple and Amazon, which are just amazing stocks over the last 10 years. Ask anyone around. Really, really good stocks. Wish I had money to put back in 10 years. So I try to compare it to the best, right? Not the best, but some of this really good quality blue chip stocks. And as you can see, the Spectacular Spider-Man, which is the first appearance of Cloak and Dagger, outdid the Dow Jones and S&P 500, but obviously didn't come near as close to Apple or Amazon. So it did pretty well, I would say. So this is the reason why I put this one on the list is Cloak and Dagger, its first appearance. They've had a TV show. I don't think it's on anymore. I think it ran 1 or 2 seasons recently. But they're always around. They've had their own series, things like that. I think it's a good, solid first appearance. I don't think it's really going to go much down at all. I think it's just a quality investment. And this, of course, was a 9.8. You can get a different grade as well, but I try to stick to at least a 9.0 and above in this one for investment. All right, number 9. We got Amazing Spider-Man 39. And in 8.0, you can get this for $800. And 5 years ago, it was $229, and 10 years ago, $186. A 5-year return of 250%, 10-year return of 330%. A record price was a 9.8, sold for $38,400, and that was this year. And this, not only is it a great storyline of the battle between Peter Parker and Green Goblin, but this is when they learned each other's identities. And obviously, their world, came crashing down because of that, because Peter's best friend was Norman Osborn's son, Harry. And also, another key factor is this is the first art of John Romita on Spider-Man. This is when John Romita started Spider-Man run, and this is when it started. So that's why it's a pretty good key in that regard. And of course, it beats the Dow Jones S&P 500, but it doesn't really come that close to Apple. All right, number 8. We got Spider-Man 252. This is a cover swipe of the classic Amazing Fantasy 15. And also, it's the first appearance of Spider-Man in the black suit in the Spider-Man series. And it's the origin of the black suit. So a CGC 9.6 you can get for $490. 5 years ago, it was $170. 10 years ago, $127. That's a 5-year return of 188%. 10-year return of 286%. A record price sold was a 9.9 sold back in 2015 for $6,000. So it'd be a lot more today. So if you're looking at, it's not that bad. Like, still beats the S&P 500. Doesn't come close to Apple and Amazon, things like that. If you want the big jump in percentages, you have to go for the 9.8s, but the 9.8s are out of reach for if your budget is $1,000. So you could probably get this book, again, this one you want a 9.0 to a 9.8. Preferably 9.8, but we're sticking for under $1,000. You can get a 9.6. All right, moving on. Number 7, we got Spider-Man 101, and this, of course, is the first appearance of Morbius, the living vampire. And you can get yourself a 7.0 right now for about $998. Right, just barely under that $1,000 mark. A 7.0 back in 2016 sold for $173. In 2011 sold for $77. 5-year return of 477%. 10-year return of 1,196%. A 9.8 sold this year for a record price at $22,000. It's crazy. So this beats Apple, comes pretty close to Amazon. I mean, this is the first appearance of Morbius. It's got to be on this list because he had his own line. They're actually making a movie that comes out, probably, I don't know when. The movies these days keep on getting pushed back, but fairly soon. We already had a trailer and everything like that. So we should be seeing this on the big screen. And even if the movie's not very good, in the end, Morbius is still a massive character with his own line and everything like that. That's what you want to go for. First appearances, big keys, big origin issues, things like that. Something where something happens in the book that's, a huge leap forward or something, or a character that goes off to be, his own thing down the road. All right. Number 6, we got Spider-Man 194, and this is the first appearance of Black Cat. And you can pick up a 9.4 of this for $900. 5 years ago was $226. 10 years ago, $105. As a 5-year return of slightly under 300%. 10-year return of 757%. A record sale sold this year in a 9.8 for $5,760. So almost ties with Apple in a 9.4. Like in the 9.8, this book would have been way more higher percentage. But again, we're sticking under $1,000. So I would say if you could get at least an 8.0 of this book, at least an 8.0, that's what I would go with. All right, number 5. We got Spider-Man 50. You can get a 4.5 of this for $925. 5 years ago it was $198. 10 years ago, $113. That's a 5-year return of a little over 350% and a 10-year return of 719%. A 9.8 sold back in 2020 for $55,000, and that was the record price. And this, of course, is the first appearance of Kingpin, who is just a great villain, not only for Spider-Man, but he's a great villain for Daredevil. And he's kind of like that more low-level villain in terms of powers and stuff like that. So they've used him in TV shows, movies, and everything because, you just need a big guy. That's it. You don't need much more as far as special effects. So I feel like they'll always keep using the Kingpin because he's just a really good villain. Number 4. We got Spider-Man 238, and this, of course, is the first appearance of the Hobgoblin, and you can get a 9.6 of this for $950. 5 years ago, that was $308. 10 years ago, $150. So looking at a 5-year return of 208%, 10-year return of 533%. A record sale of a 9.8 sold for $4,100 this year. There are 9.9s, but they don't really come up for sale. Number 3, we're looking at Spider-Man 361, and this, of course, is the first appearance of Carnage. And, of course, we all know that Carnage is in the next Spider-Man movie, played by Woody Harrelson. Will Carnage continue on? He's just such a popular character. He has his own comic lines. He's always showing up in someone else's comic. He's all over the place. So just a really good character. And it doesn't matter if this movie does good or bad. Carnage will be everywhere forever. All right. You can get a 9 of this for $850. You can get 5 years ago it was $262, and 10 years ago $136. Has a 5-year return of 224%, 10-year return of 525%. A 9.9 sold this year for record sale of $52,000. So yes. Now, there has been a massive dip from this a few months ago. It went sky high, dipped way down, but it's slowly kind of leveling out. But if I'm looking this for a long-term play, that's why I like to say long-term, then this is still a good book, even though there could be a chance that it slightly goes down a little more. I'm not worried about this. Long-term play, this is such a good book to have. And then let's move on to number 2. Ultimate Fallout 4. You can get a 9.6 for $950. And let me know, when I say you can get this is like for $950. These are actual sales. These aren't, people throwing it up online and asking a ridiculous price and it doesn't sell. This is actual sales data that I get, so this is what these books have sold for. A 9.6 sold in 5 years ago for about $108, and 10 years ago, $26. And when I do past data, this is averages. So there's some lower and some higher throughout the year. But when I do 2021, those are the current exactly pretty much within a week of today, which is we're in September. All right, so that's a 5-year return of 780%, 10-year return of 3,550%. Yeah, just decimating Amazon. Record sale of 3,850 this year. Now, to get this kind of return in 10 years again, not going to happen, right? It would have to go to ridiculous heights. But in terms of long-term play, I think this is a good book. It's the first appearance of Miles Morales. He showed up in multiple movies, cartoons, everything. So long-term play, I think this is a good, safe bet. Now let's move on to our final one. Before I do, if you haven't subscribed, think about subscribing. Also, leave a comment on maybe a book that you think should have been on here that I may have left out, and let me know why. And feel free to like this video. All right, number 1, I think we can guess what it is. Spider-Man 300, first appearance of Venom. It's Venom. What else do I need to say? Just a massive, massive character. So big that he gets his own movie, which was, I think it did almost $1 billion. And now he's getting a sequel. He's also in Spider-Man 3. He's been multiple video games, just T-shirts, everything. He is huge. Just massive, massive, huge character. You can get a 9.2 for $950. 5 years ago, it averaged about $400 or $246. 10 years ago, the average price was $135. That has a 5-year return of 286. 10-year return, 604%. A 9.9 sold last year for $25,000. Be worth a lot more now, that's for sure. I used to have a 9.9 way, way back in the day. Now, if you see, it's like, hey, this did less than the Ultimate Fallout 4 percentage-wise, but I just think this is a better bet long-term. That, like I said, the floor is a lot better. The risk is a lot better. It might not go up the same percentage, but I think if you factor in everything, I think this is a better, safer, long-term play. All right. Thanks for watching this video.